Released in 1935, New Women was directed by Cai Chusheng and stars among others Ruan Lingyu as the main protagonist Wei Ming, Wang Naidong as Dr. Wang, and Zheng Junli as a close friend and editor to Wei Ming, as well as Ai Xia as Wei Ming's neighbor Ai. The movie was inspired by the timely death of actress Ai Xia and depicts the story of Wei Ming, an educated woman living in Shanghai who has to constantly deal with and is affected by mistreatment of women and the general social order in which she finds herself. It dives not only in the personal experience of women, but also how society and especially the tabloid press attempts to and often succeeds to reject and destroy outspoken and strong women. This movie marks one of the last appearances of Ruan Lingyu, who just over a month after the release of New Women sadly took her own life. If you ever want to watch a silent film that makes you feel absolutely bad, not only about the plot of the movie itself, but also about the state of the present day world, then New Women is definitely a must-see for you. This movie is oozing with political and societal ills so much that you cannot talk about this film without also talking about the problems it focuses on. The society in which this movie was conceived was, or rather is, one mainly dominated by patriarchal structures. Men have the capacity to control their own position, as well as the position of the women around them. A strong woman, even if she is educated or considered high society by the people around her, must constantly fight the waves of advances and criticisms made by the men she encounters. Even those men who seem to be nice and supportive at first are often driven by ulterior motives. A societal double standard towards women, even present among the leftist movie makers at the time, was the superficial acceptance of self-determination, but only when it fits into one's own narrative and worldview. The leftist cinematic movement clearly suffered from a lack of female voices. While many women became famous actresses at the time, the number of women who expressed themselves through the cinematic medium as directors or screenwriters was very little. For example, Ai Xia herself, who inspired this movie, was one of only 2 screenwriters during the whole leftist cinema period. Societal norms are often projected onto women from the top down. Whether high society or not, in truth, no woman was ever on top, and even the most sophisticated of the time were made to fall by, for example, the many words of gossip and despise. In general, male objectification of women and the ability to dominate every facet of a woman's life is the strongest driving force behind every scene in this movie. And the reduction of women to an object to be used by men is a problem explored in gruesome detail. Almost every scene of the movie oozes with some sort of criticism, which reflects the poor state of society, and with every passing minute it drives the viewer more and more into an emotional corner in which the awful truth for women at the time cannot be denied any longer. This starts already off at the beginning of the movie, in which the young protagonist Wei Ming is trying through one of her friends to get her writing published. However, the publisher first rejects it, but later accepts it under the notion that a pretty face like hers will attract a large readership, essentially reducing Wei Ming's work to a side note while exploiting her natural looks. One of the main plots found throughout the movie are the ambitions of a Dr. Wang towards the main character. While he is married to one of Wei Ming's former classmates, he constantly attempts to coerce the protagonist to marry him. When she first rejects him, he responds by manipulating the principal of the school Wei Ming works for to make her lose her income. The following desperation and possible prospect to sell oneself like a thing for financial security causes Wei Ming to reject Dr. Wang even more, calling out how calculated and beast-like men behave and how women just become objects to them that are there for the taking. Later, during the film, the protagonist's daughter is very sick with what I assume to be tuberculosis. While staying at some sort of brothel in town, the owner finally breaks the protagonist's will and convinces her, as she puts it, to become a slave for one night. It turns out that her unknown rich client is Dr. Wang, who even after being rejected again, still attempts later to coerce her into a sexual relationship. This is but one of the men in the film who want to use women for their advantage, and just regard them as objects who should abide by the expectations that men present to them. And though the movie offers a slight moment of revenge when Dr. Wang tastes the wrath of a rather badass Ai Xia, the movie quickly destroys any positive feelings that it may have brought the viewer by showing the cruel reality of the protagonist's helplessness and how spiteful men and a cruel society control the narrative in the media to the point of the subject's self-destruction. Throughout the movie, the use of symbolism, whether obvious or subtle, provides the viewer constantly with a view of the inner emotional state of the main protagonist. Even if it is not always possible for every viewer to directly understand the feeling of identifying oneself with birds in a cage, or the protagonist feeling so desperate and objectified that she may as well pawn herself away for money, they still are powerful images which convey the message nonetheless. There is a call for change during the final scenes in the movie. However, even the protagonist's final cry for revenge and the energetic exclamation of her desire to live is silenced by the ultimate fate of her at the very end of the movie, pointing towards a bleak outlook and a situation that may be impossible to change for now. For me, this movie marks the climax of the pre-World War II leftist movie era in Chinese cinema. It not only has to deal with long-standing issues and attempts to combat the general societal illnesses that women experience, but it also is a reflection on and representation of issues which just arose right during the period itself. The exclamation of Ai Xia, "I am a human being, not an object," and of Wei Ming, "One day things will change," clearly underline a somewhat future to look forward to. But shockingly, if we look at the world we live today, in the year 2020, 85 years later, we are not even close to that one day. It is a powerful movie that, through the fact that it is so old, becomes even more powerful in its message. How long can we go on ignoring all these ills that still exist today and not finally bring the change that was needed already back then?